Aaron Wilson had an interview with Tytus Howard. It's like a 3 or 4 minute interview, but with some really good nuggets out of Tytus Howard that had me feeling optimistic. I was already feeling optimistic about Tytus Howard in a new system with a new scheme, with new responsibilities and a leadership role, all of that. But Tytus said a lot of things that kind of piqued my interest, like this right here.
Man, nasty. You gotta have play with a lot of grit. One offensive line that are physical, that don't take for nobody, and they just establish, the dominance up front. It exemplifies that every morning, every day on the field, and we want that in a coach because it's only gonna rub off on the offensive line, and he holds us to a high standard.
Yeah, that's good stuff on Cole Popovich right there. And I think they like Cole Popovich. They've worked with him already. Popovich has a relationship already with Nick Caley, the offensive coordinator from their time in New England. And I think there's going to be fewer F-ups on the offensive line this year. The biggest thing that I like about Tytus, honestly, at guard versus tackle, and we could evaluate PFF grades at tackle versus guard, anything else. They ran the ball better with Tytus Howard at guard last year, and it wasn't with Tytus playing perfect football as a guard, but by his sheer mass and his ability to do some things athletically that not a lot of guards can do, and especially with him committing to it full time, I do feel good about it. One clip from the Chiefs game right here, and I went back. I'm going to be honest with you. I went to watch and look for some specifically good clips that I remember from the Chiefs game. There were some bad clips from the Chiefs game, and we'll get to those, but as evidence of how the Texans can be improved without a massive infusion of talent, but just by simply knowing what to do. But here's an example of just watch the offensive line in total, not Tytus specifically. This is a group of guys that, like, they're getting really good movement on the offensive line there. If we add Tytus to the mix there at left guard, you just watch him work that dude up, get his hips around. There were some good combo blocks in this game and at the end of the year that we hadn't seen at the beginning at the end of the year that we hadn't seen at the beginning of the year. I feel good about that. The other part of it is just in simply the simple detail of knowing what to do. Remember when everybody laughed at Nick Sirianni for this a couple of Super Bowls ago?
Very important to me is that we build a smart football team. That we have a smart football team here. And I know we have the people in place to do that. The first part of being smart is knowing what to do. We're gonna have systems in place that are easier to learn. All right.
Yeah. Okay. This is the problem. Sirianni, I said at the time, all right, he's trying real hard right there. He's got a dissertation he wants to give. But as a player, 100%. You'd be astounded at how many times guys go out on a football field really like wondering, what the hell do they want me to do now? And it's a disconnect between coordinators looking at it on the whiteboard and then understanding the challenges that the players have. And everything Sirianni said there is 100% true. You want it to be simple to learn, simple from the way you look at it, but when you execute it well, it looks really complicated to the other side of the ball, to your opposition. And just by way of illustration, and I hate to make you guys live through this again. It wasn't just the offensive line. And I don't mean to pick on John Mechie here. Just watch this play one time through. Don't even look for where Mechie is. Oh, my God, you'd think offensive line. What the hell are you doing? Another tackle for a loss or a 1-yard game. Why? This is why we can't win football games. Okay, watch John Mechie there at the left of your screen, number 8. And just with a minimal knowledge of football, what do you think John Mechie should do when the ball is snapped? Should he move? At some point? And you see the slot corner just comes in and watch the slot corner. He checked real quick to double check, like, wait a second, this guy's definitely not running a route, right? Okay, I'm in, and bam, there you go. Like, is that an offensive line issue? No, that's an offensive coordinator and execution issue. Yes, it's a John Mechie issue, but when that's happening routinely at various positions, the pre-snap penalties, coming up to the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to show you a couple of these plays. This is the one. Okay, watch the center and the right guard. This isn't even necessarily multiple things. The center and the right guard, just watch one time through. I get so frustrated watching this. All right, not ideal, right? Now, there's multiple different ways that perhaps this was coached. This was not the execution I think they were going for. And I talked to two different offensive linemen this morning who had different opinions on this. So I don't want to lambaste any one individual here. It's a lot harder to block on the zone blocking these days now that you can't cut block a guy while he's already engaged. But we saw way too many times two guys either blocking one guy or one guy blocking nobody at all. But you look at the potential, there was an opportunity there. Like if somebody had handled that middle linebacker, you could have popped that. And then I'm not going to pick on Joe Mixon here, but if you watch this play, the same thing that happened to Joe Mixon, that happened to CJ Stroud at times last year, I think when he just couldn't trust his blocking, we saw a lot of instances where right there, all right, follow your blocking and watch but you tried to bounce it outside and you still got positive yardage, but just in following the blocking, and if things are drilled properly and coached properly, you turn down the easy path right up the middle there. We just saw way too much of that, and I'm tired of seeing it. It was in the tight ends, it was with the offensive linemen, it was with the wide receivers, it was with the running backs, at times with the quarterback. And all of that trickles down from the offensive coordinator. And that's why I think sometimes I might sound like I'm overly optimistic in saying like, hey, it would have been nice to get some of those big name offensive line signings, but you don't need it to be a vastly improved offensive line or vastly improved in the tight ends room or vastly improved at knowing who to block when the wide receivers don't know who they're supposed to be blocking on screens. All of those things, just by having a competent offensive coordinator, it can make a big difference. Get back to Tytus. I added the wrong one here. Here's Tytus on, here we go. Tytus on taking a leadership role on the team.
Something of a feeling of, hey, I want to take on that leadership mantle. I want to, you're one of the older guys.
I'm all in on it,
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can do to transform my body, transform my daily habits, all that to, show the younger guys the right way to do it. I'm looking forward to that challenge. Of being that leader in the group, and I want to be a guy that guys look up to and they're like, hey man, like Tyler's doing it the right way, and I want to do it that way. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I've noticed ever since I was in junior high, and it's a really cool phenomenon that happens when guys are put into a leadership role. When you're made captain for the first time, some of you that might have been captains of various sports teams, you feel the pressure to live up to that role, to be the paradigm of that. And I can remember leading push-ups the first time I was a captain of my junior high wrestling team and feeling like, well, these push-ups are a lot easier today. And I'm doing them with perfect form because everybody's looking at you. And you see that a lot, especially in the NFL. Guys, when they're transitioning through like their fifth year, and sometimes it's when they change teams and all of a sudden you're not looked at as the young kid that was drafted by your previous team, but you're looked at as a veteran on your new team. You see that transition made a lot. And I think without having Laramie Tunsil as the big brother in the room, and I'm not even saying that like whether Laramie Tunsil was a good influence, bad influence, whatever, you can own that role a little bit more. Tytus Howard has been here through some wild swings in Texans history. Multiple GMs, multiple head coaches, one Jack Easterby, different offensive coordinators. So he's kind of like ahead of his time. He's seen it all and experienced a lot of things. I think he really seemingly likes Cole Popovich. He likes Nick Caley's offense. I think we genuinely see the best version of Tytus Howard. One article that Houston Stressens had written is a really long article, and I'll link it below as soon as we're done here. But he went through Tytus Howard as a guard, Tytus Howard as a tackle. You can make some arguments that, yes, he's much better tackle in some regards. At guard, he hasn't been the best version of himself, but we know he hasn't always fully embraced the role like he seemingly is right now. But just the summation the Texans commenter said was Howard's improvement at left guard suggests he will only get better with a full offseason to prepare. This was back when Laramie Tunsil was still on the team. The Texans' run game performed better with him at left guard, and his skill set aligns with the team's shift towards a more gap-heavy approach. And everything Tytus mentioned earlier, hitting double teams, doing all of those things. Yes, I think his skill set, his sheer massiveness, I can tell you from a defensive tackle's perspective, there's no replacement for mass. There's no replacement for a wall of 17 or 1,800 pounds coming at you when they're using proper technique and they're a cohesive unit. It's an all-day son of a bitch when you do that. And they seem to really be latching onto that mentality. One disagreement I would have with Tytus is on the insistence that there was no issue at all with the culture of the offensive line. Here's Tytus when asked about it by Aaron Wilson.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. We didn't have a toxic group. As far as the players and stuff like that, we didn't have a toxic group. I feel like the guys on the group's always been close since I've been here. It's just a matter of, the type of style of offense we've been in, or the type of coaching we get, And I feel like this coaching that we're getting right now is one of the best coaching I've had since I've been in the league. And, it's attention to detail. No matter if you're a year 11, year 1 guy, everybody getting coached the same way. And that's the type of stuff we need right now.
Yeah. So he touched on a few things there. He basically displaced a little of the blame for all of the issues on the coaching they've received. There can be multiple issues anywhere, and I have a hard time believing that Shaq Mason was some kind of a character issue or anything. I think he just got old. I don't think that Kenyon Green was a character issue. He had an injury issue, and he maybe wasn't made of necessarily the nasty stuff that you want for that swarm mentality, whatever it may be. I don't know. I think with Laramie, it's a combination of, it was his salary, yes, but then also if you're trying to have this offense that is blue collar, down in the dirt, just pipe swinging, that's not Laramie Tunsil's game. When it comes to how do you respond to and how do you adapt to the coaching, sometimes if you've got incompetent coaches, you're going to see the worst version of the players' personalities when they're disgruntled, when it's really hard to just be yes, sir, no, sir, all the time, when sometimes you're smarter than the guy who's coaching you. So I have zero clue about what actually happened with all of that. I do know that D'Amico, at least twice this offseason, has mentioned that there needed to be a change of some sort in the environment within the offensive line and who's coaching them. This is D'Amico talking about the new mindset of the offensive line.
It's a great question. Our offensive line, the mindset, I see it drastically changing. I see Coach Cole Popovich, his instant impact on those guys. You can see it from the way they work in their individual drills, the way they come off the line with low pass. It's just the small technique things that you see, how they're dialed in on their hand placement, just speaking the same language. One of the coolest things I've seen when we were working out in phase 2, we work out, we activate our guys here in the bubble, and we all travel outside to do our different drills. And to see the O-line come out, and whoever was out first, they waited on the other guys, and they joined together as a group, and then they traveled down to the opposite end of the field to do their position work. So that just shows me that togetherness, that connection that I truly believe in. You want to be a great unit, you have to be connected. So Cole has kind of spurred that connection, that intensity, the mentality that I'm looking for. And we have that. We have the intangibles of what it takes. Now we just got to go out and get it done when we put pads.
Yeah, I think the biggest non-technical assessment I could give of just having seen this configuration for a couple months now is that it seems like Nick Caley and Cole are more of a D'Amico Ryans mindset. They are more of a lot of what he looks for either in his players or his coaches or himself personally on the defensive side of the ball. I think, what is D'Amico? D'Amico is the most polite and nicest guy in the world. Hard to get him rankled about just about anything that doesn't involve CJ Stroud's shoulder. But on the football field, he was an absolute monster. He just wanted to destroy people, and it was really fun to watch and see. One of you made a good point about Tytus struggling to get to the second level and getting out there on run blocks. Yes, I agree with that, probably because of age and injuries and weight, but move him into guard and they can avoid some of those issues. I think weight was a big thing. My first thought when I got out to camp last year for the first time was Tytus is big. I'm not so sure in a good way. And you would see early in the season, he was moving like a 35-year-old offensive lineman, with the kind of guys that almost can't have a hard time getting up off the ground. He looked aged beyond his years, and I think some of that had to do with body weight. So to hear him talk about really committing to dialing in on the training and perhaps what he's doing at the dinner table, I think that's a really good sign and evidence of leadership and him taking on that mentality. I think Cole Popovich is going to be good for these guys. I think that the one thing about New England, and now listen, I would never hire a coach from the Belichick tree again. They try too hard to be like Bill Belichick. Bill O'Brien didn't try to be like Belichick, but still, we know. But he was like one of the best versions of a head coach out of New England. One thing about New England was the reasons that those offensive lines were so good year after year after year was, and Cole Popovich, for those of you who don't know, came via New England originally. They dial in on the specific details of the position. Every year I would watch the Patriots, and one year I might say, God, this defensive line just isn't going to get it done in week 1. And then I'd watch them in week 7 or week 8, and I'd be like, did they trade for a bunch of new guys? Because these guys are dialed in. They improved throughout the season, and a lot of that comes through a focus on just simple technique that a lot of NFL teams lose sight of over the course of the regular season. There's some coaches who kind of think like, these guys are the guys they are, and we're going to worry about X's and O's. There's other teams where they are dialed in on technique all the time, and I never got the sense that the Texans' offensive line was being coached that way. And I don't think that the last few offensive coordinators, I would include Bill O'Brien in this, weren't as dialed in on the finite details, the very specific details, instead of focusing on the scheme itself. And so far, I like what I see out of these coaching staffs. And I like what I see out of the way the players are responding to it. I think there's a lot of guys on that offense that have the ability to be a lot better than what they showed last year. So I'm going to cut this off. I've got another one coming up in about a half hour. Thank you for all the comments. I'll try to get to them posthumously here in one of the live streams later on.